Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 112 of the HooperCast.
What?
Whoa!
100 plus a dozen.
Oh, yeah. I am coming to you from a different locale yet again today, or tonight. We're going to doing things a little differently this week, recording a little bit later on Wednesday. I am actually in a soundproof booth, Dustin.
Oh, snap. You're going to sound like crystal clear.
Yeah, and not only that, my microphone is on a stand with a pop guard. I'm standing up. The room is lined with those little foam pyramids. Mm-hmm. And there's a little glass window I'm looking through to my producer who's not there. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty legit. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. That's going to be awesome. It's just going to make me sound awful.
Yeah, my Pete. Now, actually, I was hoping this would put me on par with your sound. Your sound's always so clear. Mine's the one with all the echoes and the, So I've got this pop guard, so now I can be right up on the mic, and I don't have to worry about all the popping because it's guarding it,
Gotcha.
This is a temporary setup because I'm not sure I can pull off this location every week, but man, I'd like to. It's pretty sweet. It feels legit. Got my water off to the side. I can reach it without having to take my face away from the mic. It's all cool, man.
That's awesome.
I can see my waveforms through the pop guard. It's good stuff.
Snap.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're rolling like a G.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying to roll. Attempting to roll like a G.
Did I just sound like the whitest person ever or not?
You're rolling like a G.
You are a gangster.
You are very cool. It's been a little bit, Dustin. We totally did not release 2 episodes that were pre-recorded the last 2 weeks.
No,
but it feels as if we had. Yeah, so it's good to get back on the mic with you. Dustin and I, about at the same time, decided to get on board with a show on Amazon Prime called The Man in the High Castle. And this is a 10-episode first season. I believe the pilot was actually released in, what was it, January of last year?
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
And then the other 9 were released in November because Amazon had its pilot season. Was that a year ago?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so I guess they'll be having another one coming up soon. But
yeah.
Amazon had its pilot season, and The Man in the High Castle, I guess, did really well. And so then they went ahead and released the other ones. But it's actually based on a one of the reasons I wanted to get on board with it was because when I heard it was based on a Philip K. Dick novel.
Yes.
And the basic premise being that an alternate 1962 where Nazi Germany and Japan won World War II and took over the United States, or the former United States.
Yes.
And so I was just
which I have to say is one of the best concepts for a show.
Yeah. Well, I've long extolled the virtues of speculative fiction and how interesting it is to look at a slightly different or even a vastly different reality, but an alternate universe based on one large thing changing things. Like what I like about the show so much is it's not like they make all the people wear. It's not like they burn swastikas in the foreheads of all the native born Americans. They live there, and honestly, day to day, it's not too bad, except for unless you're a Jew or
right,
that kind of thing. So anyway, let's I've been kind of hammering on about it. I really liked this show. I really did. I was surprised how much I liked it.
Yeah, I was too. I thought this was going to be like one of those shows that has such a great concept but doesn't match that in execution. But man, I was proven way wrong.
Yeah, I really to me, obviously story is way important, but what is really great to me about this show is that it's basically one big thriller. So there's the obvious. What's great about these kinds of antagonists being like this dictatorship from afar, basically. But you still have the Nazis running things on the east side of the United States, and then the Japanese and the Kempeitai on the eastern end of the United States.
The Western, yeah.
You have this constant threat of being exposed as this rebel against them, and the basic plot of the show is that there's this couple, Frank and Juliana, who live in San Francisco, I think.
San Francisco,
yeah, and who essentially live their lives sort of minding their own business and just kind of making their way. Frank works at a gun factory or a manufacturing factory. I mean, he's a fabricator.
Of replica guns.
Yes.
Not of actual firing.
Yes,
weapons.
because that is prohibited by law.
Yeah.
And Juliana is unemployed, and they allude to her having a recent accident.
Yes.
So essentially what happens is that Juliana's sister is caught up in the revolution, essentially, against these large powers, and she is it happens like the first episode. I'll go ahead and say her sister is killed by the Kempeitai. They're pursuing her. She hands this bag to her sister, and then she is promptly shot by the Kempeitai.
Right.
And Juliana comes to...
So now our protagonist has in possession something worth dying over.
Yes. And you essentially... The plot becomes centered on the kind of the MacGuffin of the first season is these films, which these people are trying to deliver to this person known as the Man in the High Castle. And the films show different things, but they essentially sum up to an alternate version of things. Perhaps America as it would have been, or how much should I talk about that? I mean, I'm not going to talk about the one you see in like the second to last episode, but maybe
sure.
That first one showing America winning the war. And so you get the impression like, what are these? Because this isn't what happened. This isn't our reality right now because we've lost. And there's Winston Churchill, and there's VE Day. Like, what is all this stuff? Like, that shows us winning. This doesn't make sense. And so you get the feeling you're not quite sure what the films are or how they were made, but you know that obviously why the Kempeitai wants to keep, and the Nazis want to keep them want to get rid of them, like, round them all up and get rid of them, because it's dangerous propaganda to them. So it becomes wrapped up in that, and it's really good. And I love when there's the constant threat of essentially being imprisoned and killed. Like, you can't do that too well with like current day normal examples, because you can't just black bag people and throw them in a gulag. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So that's why this sort of thing is so scary, because it's like, oh no, they'll totally throw you in jail or just kill you for this. Like, they're not fucking around.
Exactly. And on top of Juliana and Frank, there's also a few other characters. Juliana, of course, takes this film and flees to the area sort of near the Rockies and down into Mexico, which is sort of a neutral zone, neither occupied by the Nazi regime nor the Japanese Pacific states. So she flees out there and runs into a guy named Joe Blake, and who has an interesting story all his own. On top of that, you'll meet an Obergruppenführer named John Smith, who is just a few rungs under Hitler, and works there in the East. And then you've got a chief inspector for the Kempeitai. Then you have a trade minister. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head.
It's
Tagomi or something.
Yeah, Tagomi. Yeah,
Tagomi. Yeah.
I almost said Tadashi, but that's the brother from Big Hero 6. I almost said
Big Hero 6.
Yoshida, but that's kind of like Yoshi. Yeah, I think it's Tagomi.
I think it's Tagomi. I think,
Yeah.
and so he's a main character, and then you'll see DJ Qualls' character, Ed, who is Frank's best friend and loyal companion.
Man,
and,
which I anyone who follows the show on Twitter, I described, I won't give away anything, but I described DJ Qualls' character as deserving of the recipient of most loyal bro for this show. That guy is like such a friend to Frank. Like
he is,
like,
man,
above and beyond. I'm just like, oh my God, this guy's amazing.
He is.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these characters are super interesting, and the one that I think takes probably the longest to realize his relevance is the trade minister.
Yeah.
But apart from that, everyone kind of flows in and out of each other's stories, very well, and in expected and unexpected ways. And man, all of the characters are super interesting, and I can't wait to see more of them in the future.
And what I really, really, really like about the show, and this is a big hang up for me, I really don't like it when characters do things that don't make sense. And one of the things this show does so well is that everything everyone does makes complete sense within the context of the story. Like, even the way they talk to each other. I noticed there would be particular scenes between Frank and Juliana, where most of the time a similar scene would be shot in some other kind of storytelling. It's done really conventionally and predictably. You'd be surprised how many movies you watch where the scene plays out very much the same, like even down to the same lines. And so there was one of those coming up. I can't remember what it was, and then and just what they say to each other and how they respond to each other, the dynamic was just different. And I just remember thinking, like, whoever wrote this took special care to think about how people would talk to each other in this situation. They didn't write it like a scene. They wrote it like a conversation between this girl who honestly has stirred up a lot of problems for Frank, and the guy who's just had it with everything that they've been through at that point in the story. And I just thought the character work and the writing was especially good for this show.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should probably add too that even the Nazi characters, especially the Obergruppenführer Smith, is somehow
likable,
sympathetic, and likable. And that's so strange because, Nazis have almost become like the go-to bad guy, especially in cinema.
Indiana Jones.
And in any situation, they're generally like one-dimensional, evilest person you can imagine kind of guys. And then you get this guy here who, like I said, is just a few rungs below Hitler. And you'd think like, okay, this is going to be, the guy. And then they start introducing people who are worse than him, which then makes him seem way more sympathetic. And they start giving him problems like, Jesse Pinkman style, dilemmas, like moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
And, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how they did it, but they made you kind of feel for a Nazi.
Yeah, think about it. So you have a Nazi and basically a member of the Nazi High Command, who is the person, one of the main people trying to keep the films from being distributed to the man in the high castle. So you're like, okay, so they've got a Nazi. He's trying to stop our heroes from completing their mission, and they cast Rufus Sewell to play him. Like, okay. Yeah. I'm clearly supposed to hate this guy. And then somehow, like you said, they introduce people worse than him. He starts to basically realize that his number's coming up. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like I don't want anything bad to happen to this guy. And because he's so likable, and he's not, it's not like, likable just while he's monologuing, because some movies do this halfway well, where you got the mustache twirling villain, but he also has a clear motivation that makes sense to you. This is also like, man, I get it. Like he's I ain't mad at him. You know, I don't.
Right.
He's just. When you see the way he talks, especially the VA Day thing at his house, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
when you basically see that he's essentially a traditional, what you would consider like a traditional salt of the earth American, just the way he talks about family or just how he is with his kids and stuff. You're just like, I like this guy, but you have to remind yourself, like, this guy's a Nazi. Like, he's in his house, and it's like a straight up like old fashioned home and traditional values, and he's wearing like a sweater vest and talking to his kids about working hard and excelling and everything. And then he walks into his office, and there's like a little swastika pin on his desk. You're like, oh crap, right? He's a Nazi. Oh, I hate this guy. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. And that's so interesting, and I love the juxtaposition of like the traditional like white picket fence kind of guy, who is a part of, you know, the evilest organization that has ever lived.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's super, super interesting that they were able to do that and still make him simultaneously threatening and like, I feel bad for him.
Yeah.
How could you do both? It just seems like those are going to cancel each other out.
Yeah.
And the more like sympathetic, the less threatening, and the more threatening, the less sympathetic, but somehow he does both perfectly. And, so, I mean, stuff like that, man, it's just mind blowing.
And speaking of mind blowing, man, like, especially like maybe the last two episodes, especially the end of the season, it ends on like this WTF moment, like to a level that I haven't felt since the early days of Lost.
Yeah, I was going to say that it was very clearly like a Hatch moment.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, something out of like Heroes or something, but at the same time it was completely engrossing rather than like a turnoff. It wasn't it didn't, you know, bother me that I could see this is the hook. This is how they're going to get you to watch season 2. And I don't know, man. It's very, very awesome. I just like the way that everything flowed, and I don't know. To me, it's sort of like I said, one of the best concepts, obviously, but on top of that, just like everything was almost tailor made for my sensibilities.
Yeah, I know.
In the okay, so it's something set in the 1960s, which is an infinitely like entertaining time period to shoot or set a film in. And then not only is it set in the 60s, so you get all that cool like 60s fashion and 60s stuff, but then all of a sudden, like now we've got Nazis and World War II stuff, which is super infinitely entertaining on film. And then on top of that, you get these complex characters, which all have clear goals, motivations, and like, thought processes. And yeah, man, it just seemed like perfectly tailored to the kind of stuff that I like. And, everything made sense. It didn't seem like there's a lot of stuff out there, and I've been vocal about this in the past. But there's a lot of stuff out there that I think trades on like, okay, we're going to be mature because we have this in it or because we have that. And it's just sort of like trading on, like, okay, well, you can't do this in a PG-13 movie, so therefore we're going to get these like bonus points for maturity, even though the story itself isn't mature. It's just that we're showing things to manipulate you into thinking we're mature than we are. But there's none of that here. Like, to me, this was an honest story, and people had something to say. And as far as, correct me if I'm wrong, Hooper, but this is just one novel, correct? It's not a series.
It's one novel.
So, are you familiar with the novel? Do you know?
No, I've got a coworker who just finished reading it, and he was asking me about the show. And from what from what notes we've compared, not that they're not similar at all, but I'm talking about characters' names, and he's like, "What?" Like, I feel like the novel's very different. I think it's probably a lot broader.
Gotcha.
And it probably doesn't have specific characters. I'm not sure how it's written to be honest.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, I wonder how. There is one thing that I do know that's different between the two, and I was just wondering about like how much of the book was covered in this first season, but probably it sounds like there's not much correlation.
No, I feel like probably the concept, and then a lot of key things are. I get the feeling that they're not really written the same. Like I get the feeling that the novel is not a traditional narrative that unfolds.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know, and maybe some listeners know a little better, but I get the feeling that the novel is covers a lot broader of a spectrum of a span of time, maybe, which maybe is why one of the reasons they thought they could adapt it to a show.
Sure. Well, let me. This is spoiler territory, so you can cut this out if you deem it necessary.
Well, let's go ahead. Let's get into spoilers real quick. I mean, let's just go ahead and tell everyone, like, hey, look, the show's really good. Please check it out on Amazon. Again, if you got that Prime account, it's free. Check it out. It really is something great.
And big shout out to our good friend Lee Shorten.
Lee Shorten,
you the man, brother.
Lee Shorten be liking our tweets.
Yeah, be retweeting.
DJ Qualls too, actually.
DJ Qualls. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Big shout out to you too, DJ Qualls.
Woo! Yeah. Let's get into spoilers real quick.
Okay. So one of the differences, we'll just start here because that's what we were talking about. One of the differences between the book and the show is that, in the show we said they're finding these films. In the book, what they actually find are books, not films.
Yeah.
So the difference being, a book can be faked still in the same world. Whereas with the films, because you're seeing something that never happened or maybe hasn't happened yet, it brings in ideas of time travel or parallel universes that weren't present in Dick's original book. So I don't know what role science fiction plays in Philip K. Dick's book. Probably nothing. But yeah, it's heavily present here. From the get-go, there's the idea that we could be seeing something, parallel or alternate.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and to bring up the ending as well, like, because my coworker said, have they mentioned like the Oracle or anything? I was like, yeah, the trade minister like meditates and or consults these sticks that are supposed to be of the Oracle or something. And obviously, at the very end of the season, that was like the biggest mind job ever, was him just like I thought he was about to kill himself. Like he sits down on that bench. I was like, well, he's going to crunch down on a pill and die peacefully.
Right. Yeah.
And then like he snaps his eyes open and it's a whole different America. And then there's all the flags everywhere and they're selling Cokes and they're listening to like some doo-wop. And I was like,
yeah.
It was that was nuts to me, and that was the biggest lost moment. Was like, holy crap, where are we?
Yeah, absolutely, because that opens up a whole new possibility for season 2. And is he stuck there? Can he cross between? Is he going to have to find a way to come back? Is the man in the high castle over there? Like, what's going on? Yeah. So,
dude, and so many questions. Like, if that's the man in the high castle, then how is he aware of how is he aware of this alternate universe? And why does he care about the people in it? And how does he think he can bridge how does he think he can bridge the two worlds? And and the craziest, because there was there was the half measure and the full measure with the alternate universes. Obviously, first there was like the 1/10 measure, which was the first film, which was, hey, it's showing us winning the war. I'm like, oh, that is kind of crazy. And then like in maybe the episode or two before the end, they had the film where it shows Juliana and Frank being executed, being caught by the Nazis and executed, and the executioner is Joe. And that's how they find out that he's a Nazi. And I was whoa, like, this is nuts. Ridiculous. Like, this is them. This is crazy. And then when Tagomi full on, world jumps, I was like, he just takes a whole quantum leap into 1962 America, like Don Draper America. It's like, oh wow, it's nuts.
Right, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
What do you think about this theory? So I read this theory that said that the man on the high castle is Adolf Hitler. That his house was kind of castle-ish and up on the mountains in the Alps.
Yeah.
The idea of the theory is that the resistance is actually working for Hitler, although they don't know it. They're trying to get these films to him, and we saw he had a vast library of them. And the idea was that either he's had some sort of change of heart or some sort of something, or that he is collecting them because he was able to win the war because they were already there, and he's seeing glimpses of the future and could adjust strategies. And the reason that people started hunting them down was initially so that he could win the war. He could find them and win the war. But where they come from is still a mystery. But that was one of the theories I had read.
What do you
think about that?
Of the two of those, because the second one has too many loose ends to me that I can't really make heads or tails of it. What makes more sense is the first one, where he has a change of heart because in the show he is sick. Everyone's sort of waiting for him to die. Like the Nazis kind of are waiting for him to die so that they can go ahead and just obliterate the Japanese. And the Japanese know they can't win. And obviously there's like a whole assassination attempt on someone else that's meant to incite a war between the Nazis and the Japanese within the show. So there's that, but there's also the whole plot, the whole thing surrounding John Smith with like the are you with us or are you against us? Like, we're going to take out the Fuhrer. And so you wonder, like, why would they want to kill him? And, and so I figured at the time it was simply like, well, to accelerate the war so we can go ahead and bump off the Japanese. But if this theory would be true, then they know he's up to something, which could have to do with the films. And so you kind of applaud John Smith in a way for his loyalty to Adolf Hitler. But then later you're like, you don't realize, man, you're helping the man in the high castle. Like,
right. and that
that's
could
interesting.
I mean, that's a huge like thing, because now it's sort of like the resistance is not really the resistance if they're working for Hitler, or are they? That's an interesting layer. Plus the idea that maybe in season 2, the writers could try to do what they did with John Smith and make us actually root for Hitler. Mm-hmm. If Hitler is trying to get these to right a wrong or whatever, or prevent a future catastrophe, could we end up in season 2 hoping that Hitler succeeds in his plans?
That would be the craziest thing ever. Is like the main protagonist of this show is Hitler, and everyone's okay with that.
Right, yeah. Wouldn't that be ridiculous?
Oh, man.
But the weird thing is, I wouldn't necessarily be against it.
No, I mean, that would be interesting, because it's not like it's let's kill the Jews, Hitler. It's like, hey, I'm sorry I killed the Jews, Hitler, and I want to prevent further killing of Jews, Hitler, and merge timelines with the DeLorean Hitler.
DeLorean Hitler. Yeah. Doc Brown Hitler.
Well, actually, I feel like the DeLorean, if it were Hitler, if Hitler was Doc Brown, the DeLorean would be a Volkswagen.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Okay. Well, do you have any further thoughts on the show?
Not so much, man. I'm super excited for season 2 and want to see where this thing goes. And I mean, as weird as it sounds, I may have to stick around with Amazon Prime just for this thing.
Yeah, dude, I'm definitely excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump topics. Do you want to talk about Star Wars some?
Let's do it. I know the last time we talked about Star Wars, it was more
it was a lot more general.
Free.
Yeah.
You want to get into the meat of it?
Let's get into the meat of it, man.
All right, let's do it.
Maybe it's better that you. I don't know how do you want to do this, but maybe it's better that you ask me questions.
Okay.
Since, because I went back and listened to that episode after having seen the movie, and I was trying to plug in the knowledge I now had with all the things you were implying.
Yes.
So I guess the first thing we ought to talk about is the death of Han Solo.
Yes.
Which was, I assume, the big thing you were referring to toward the end of the movie.
Yes, which was spoiled for me.
Yeah. Which I'll say real quick, I think the internet did a relatively good job with the spoilers for this movie, honestly. Like,
yeah, I would agree.
I nothing was spoiled for me, and I didn't click on articles and stuff, but it wasn't like they had like a meme posted up that was like an obvious thing, except in your case, I guess.
Yeah, the way it got spoiled for me was I think I was on like, I don't know, some like news station. It was like completely unrelated. And the top comment was Kylo Ren kills his own father, Han Solo.
Oh God.
And so I was like, Dustin, forget it. It wasn't true. The movie's not even out yet. The movie wasn't even out yet, man.
Oh.
And I was like, he's just some troll. He's just trying to get somebody to believe it. It's not true. And then, like in the film, whenever it starts becoming clear that it was Han Solo's son, I was like, oh my God, it's true. No.
You know, that couldn't have been a more specific spoiler title without like the time code in it or something.
Right. Exactly.
Man.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well. Yeah. So that happens.
Yes, it does. And I stand by my initial, sort of statement, which is I'm not against that happened. I'm not against the death of Han Solo. I'm against sort of the fact that it doesn't seem to carry weight moving forward. And sort of the case in point for me is that Leia's reaction to this is just to hug somebody.
Uh-huh.
There's not like a moment where she gets to really feel it and let that like that pain wash over her. What do you think?
Yeah, they definitely don't really give you time to sit with it. I'm in times like this, I always try to reflect on what would I have rather happened. Like, did I have a better idea? And I don't know exactly how I envisioned the death of Han Solo. I never really pictured him dying. But
right.
You sort of have to start thinking about it when they decide to put, a 70-something-year-old actor in the movie. You start to think like, okay, well, we're not just going to sort of make this occur after the lifetimes of these characters. So we also have to start thinking about how they're all going to die, which is a thought that never really entered your mind once the trilogy ended.
Right.
So I didn't have an idea of how I thought Han Solo should meet his demise because, and so I'll put it this way. I think it's really obvious once that scene begins what's going to happen. I mean, he sees Kylo Ren on a cartoonishly large, like inside what looks like an old nuclear reactor, and on a long walkway with no railings, with low lighting, and
and like a spotlight.
Yeah. So, and then as soon as he yells out, Ben, like I'm just like, oh well, he's gonna die. Like he walks out there with them, and I'm just like, man, all he's got to do. You realize all he has to do is use the Force to tip you off balance, and you'll just fall.
Yep, pretty much.
So I just knew that he was going through completely vulnerable. Something. Once I realized, like he was doing something that A New Hope Han Solo would never do, which is approach his enemy with complete vulnerability.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, the circle is about to be complete. And I didn't really have a problem with it. But mostly just because I couldn't think of any better way to do it.
Sure.
Well, and I thought that really at that point, like he had sort of served. Here's the thing: he served his purpose within the story, and And the reason it feels bigger, the reason it feels the way it feels is because he's larger than this one movie. And so for a second I thought, well, what if we had just met him? Like, let's pretend he has no history in the trilogy. Would we feel as bad? Obviously not.
Yeah.
But within this story and the history we've seen him in, he's sort of, it would have been nice to see him reunite with Luke and everything. So I don't know. That is the feeling, is because like we've seen him for so long, and I think we wanted a couple more specific moments with him. And then most of what, basically everything connected to his death is began and ended in this film. Like, he doesn't get killed by Jabba the Hutt. You know, it's not like they finally catch up to him and he's got to go answer for all of his past crimes. You know, they decide in this movie that him and Leia had a son. His son was named Ben Solo. Luke trained Ben to be a Jedi. He decides to call himself Kylo Ren, and decides to be bad, and that he can't move on without, killing his dad. And so that's all made up in this film. So I can see that the idea that if you watch A New Hope and you tell yourself that's how he's going to die, you're like, God, it just feels so distant from these three. Does that make sense? Like, because everything surrounding his death is very recent and new.
Is new, yeah.
Like, it's unrelated to anything he does in the original trilogy. Sure.
Well, see, I don't have a problem with the newness, and I don't have a problem with that. I guess what bothered me the most was that his death. I mean, would you agree the Han Solo story is not the A story of the film?
No, it's not.
So, I mean, the thing is, when a character dies, like Sirius Black. When Sirius Black dies, that has to have serious repercussions on Harry and on the A story, and the way that from that point on things are different.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that in the A story here, where then Rey and Finn go to fight Kylo Ren. That's fine, but that would have happened had had Han Solo not died. So it doesn't feel like a huge change of course, or like things are more personal, because those two characters didn't really know or much care for Han Solo, really, other than maybe Finn or maybe Rey because he offered her the job.
Yeah.
So to me, it just felt like it didn't have the weight, because the character who should have felt it was Leia, and she didn't get the big scene, of melodrama where she finds out he dies, and really nobody did, and you'd think, okay, well then maybe Chewie will get it, and so he gets mad, but he doesn't really feel the pain. There's not like a scene of him distraught, and then on top of that too. Something I neglected to mention in the original review, although I thought might have been a little spoilerish now that I think about it. So maybe I wouldn't have said it anyway. Is when I was in the theater and like you said, you can obviously tell what's going to happen here, and plus it had been spoiled for me, so I knew what was about to happen for sure. So my thought was that the death of Han Solo, we were going to cut to Luke feeling the death. And that first time we see Luke would be him feeling the death of Han Solo. And that would be sort of his moment of like, okay, enough's enough. I've got to get in this thing. And while it would have been a little, like I said, in that even, in the review even, that it would be a little deus ex machina for him to show up at the climax and defeat people, that would have given that death a little more weight, because then had Luke felt it and shown up, then the A story would be irrevocably changed because of the death of Han Solo. Now, what should have been the A story all along, but was sort of abandoned halfway through the film, of the search for Luke, now comes to fruition because of the death of Han Solo. So therefore, the death of Han Solo has a ripple effect on the way that the timeline of events transpires. And otherwise, it doesn't. Because if he had stayed alive, and stuff, then they would have still fought Kylo Ren, and then theoretically they would have taken the Millennium Falcon, even Han Solo, to the island that would find Luke. You know, it's not like that wouldn't have happened had he lived. So for that reason, it just felt like it didn't have the weight that a main character's death should have. And so I guess that was my problem with it. I mean, does that make sense, or am I being too harsh on the moment?
It makes sense.
But I'm being too harsh.
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, it's like I think what's critical right now for them, and the way they execute the movie, I think they had to do it for several reasons. One being completely economical with how much they use certain characters, but also and also, you know, in pure brass tacks talk, you know, set up effectively transition to these new characters. So for me, bringing Luke in too early would have taken away from Rey and Finn, I think.
Okay.
And as much as I came away with the movie like this, I walked out and I was just like, okay, I had to really ruminate on it. Like, what did I think? And it gave me, it was a familiar feeling. And I was like, okay, this is one of those where I'm fine. I can't really think of any problems I had. And anything I sort of had little problems with, I think it's just like I said, like, what would I have done differently? And anything I would have done differently would have drastically changed the outcome of other elements of the story that would have ultimately made the movie worse. Or potentially could have. And so I end up with this feeling of, I'm not floored right now, but I know that this feeling, and this feeling is how I feel when the movie was fine and it's going to grow on me the next time I see it. I'm wondering why I'm not overjoyed, but don't worry about it. It's not because I didn't like it. And so,
right.
I thought about why I got that feeling, and it was because everything made sense to me. Like, the plot made sense. Nothing was sticking. Literally, I was telling John, the only real big problem I had with the movie was when Rey just knows to tell the stormtrooper to undo her handcuffs and leave the door open. I was like, how did she know that was a Jedi power? Like, she read in a magazine. Exactly. She read like a Jedi magazine that was like, hey, try this, you know. Or something.
How
like
to, Jedi how to.
Yeah, she read the script, or she saw the original movies. Like, there's no possible reason why I would, you know, that was the only thing, to be honest.
Sure.
But these are really about setting up these new characters, and the double-edged sword of using original characters, the original characters, is that you got to treat them. You can't really give them too much screen time, or really them be the focal point of the story too much, because they're supporting characters. But the trick is they're supporting characters that we know, and they used to be main characters, and that's really the trick of it. So when you kill one of them, you know, I didn't feel this heartbreaking like gut punch when they killed Han. I was sad. I was like, oh damn it, you know.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know. And I thought ultimately, like, God, you could have been so much more use if you hadn't gone out there, you stupid idiot, too. I felt that. Right. But I also felt like kind of like this emotional closure of this was sort of the last thing he was trying to do for Leia. It just got him killed. And so part of me felt a little, if anything, like what a waste. Like, what a waste of Han Solo. Like, what a waste of he'll never fly the Millennium Falcon again. Like, this is it. You know, this is how he dies. But it made sense for Kylo Ren to kill him, and it made sense why. I just sort of wished, like, I guess I wished it had been under a little bit more believable circumstances. But then again, if he had sort of cornered Han, and then Han decided to confront him then, that would have been a disservice to Han's courage in a way, or his frankness in confronting his son, because he walked up to him knowing full well what could happen, instead of like, it'd be kind of cowardly for him to confront him once he was cornered, So then again, it's like, well, he walked up to him like a G and told him he should come home,
right.
And talked to him real honestly. And that was some real acting by Harrison Ford, especially at the very, right after he stabs him, he does that little thing where he just walks up and he's like, and he just sort of rubs his cheek. I was like, oh shit. Like he doesn't even punch him or anything or try and take him with him. He's just like, oh, my boy. And falls. I was like, God.
Mm-hmm. That to me was the gut punch. And I told my brother, I saw this with my brother, and I told him after that the only thing that probably would have got me worse, but also would have been like super cheesy at the same time. So it would have been really weird, because I would have been like repulsed by the moment, but also touched by the moment, is if Han Solo had reached that hand out, and even after, being stabbed, reached his hand out and said, "I love you." And Kylo Ren just said, "I know," and just dumped him off the side.
Oh.
Wouldn't that have been just a gut punch, but also kind of cheesy at the same time? To rehash those lines. It would have been super cheesy, but it would have been such a gut punch. "I love you. I know." And then death. And then we'd never be able to watch Empire the same way again, ever.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one more question for you, Hooper.
Yes.
Okay, so in my initial review, I had mentioned something, which I'll go ahead and elaborate on here, and you had agreed with me that this would bother you, and it's not necessarily that it bothers me. I'm of two minds about it, and so let me just go ahead and tell you what it is. That is the sparing use of Luke Skywalker, sort of appearing at the end. And in the initial review, I had mentioned that they had spent the majority of the film sort of asking this question, where is he? And then building up to, this, moment where he would be relevant, and continued mentioning Luke Skywalker, only to, find him at the end of the film and that's it. Doesn't get to say a single line. So in the initial review, I said that, that was an issue, but that I almost kind of didn't have a problem with this issue, because I get it. Like, it makes sense and it works, but that it is an issue in that the thing hasn't really proved itself of like this TV show format that, say, the Marvel Universe has. So the idea was that I was of two minds about it, because I was bothered by the fact that they continually brought up a character's name and then didn't give me like fulfillment in this thing that they've been setting up. It's almost like a Chekhov's gun. It's there and it keeps being mentioned, but it never fires. And then at the same time, though, I don't know that it would have worked better with him in any other role in the film. So I'm of two minds about it. Are you still, do you agree with yourself in that, did that bother you?
At that particular moment, I was getting kind of sweaty, and I was like, "Movie's about to end, right?" Because I'm hungry and I gotta pee, So I have to admit that those sort of made me think like, "No, that doesn't bother me. I gotta go." But
yeah.
I'm sort of half on the fence. Like, I think at the time I said that that's kind of frustrating for them to build up a character and then have him not only show up at the very end, but not have any lines. It's kind of like, oh, I guess we'll wait another 2 years to see Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. But then again, like, when I really think about it, I didn't care. And I think that's, again, another, because to me, I don't know. I guess if I had felt the whole time that I really needed to see Luke Skywalker in the movie, then I feel like maybe that would have been a fault of the writing of their new characters. I feel like that would have been, I feel like I would have missed the point. I guess,
Sure.
of the movie. Like, I wanted more of him, but then again, I thought, and part of this comes from an article I read about why it's important that they withhold Luke Skywalker. And chiefly because, you know, the more he's in the movie, the more it takes away from Rey as a character.
Right.
I think what was the thing worded it so much better than I am remembering it, but I was just okay with it because I thought, you know, you can kind of pocket him for the next one, and it sort of parallels Kylo Ren by the end of the film, where he's getting jetted off to go see Snoke to further his training, and maybe she'll further her training with Luke. So I was okay with it. I kind of wish they'd ended it on a different note. I sort of wish that I wish that he had reached out his hand and the lightsaber had flew to it. You know, I wish there had been, obviously, look, they're not going to open the next movie on those cliffs in Ireland and, you know, it's not Ireland in the movie. It's, it's a planet. It's not Ireland.
Right, sure.
But they're not going to open episode 8 with him on the thing, and the first thing he says is no, and she goes okay and leaves. Like, you know, he's gonna answer the call to action. But I wish that there had been a little bit more of like a woo at the end, like, moment. Like, I wish that he had been floating some rocks or something, like he was on Dagobah when she walks up to him and then he drops them, or, you know, he stacks them back up like Poltergeist. And I wish that when he turned around and she had held it out, he would have, you know, it would have flown out of her hand and just gone to his. And just a little bit more of like a decisive, like, oh yeah, baby, I'm back. You know, I wanted some of that. And I guess what we saw in his eyes was a lot more of like a pained thing. Like, oh God, he is dead, isn't he? Like, which is fine. But I wish it had been a little bit more of like, I wish it had been a much more clap-inducing exchange between them.
Sure, I agree.
And I really dislike helicopter shots like they ended it on, because that was the only shot in the film that screamed, this is a movie, these are actors, this is a location, and we're shooting from a helicopter.
Yeah.
You know, because it made me think of a real life aircraft in this movie full of spaceships and, you know, death planet. There's still one guy with a regular old Coast Guard helicopter shooting them on a cliff. And so the very last shot of the movie took me completely out of the film. I mean, right before the credits rolled and reminded me that I was watching a movie, so it's not that bad. But I just remember thinking, like, God, such a poor shot. Why did you do that? There's so much good cinematography in this. Like,
yeah, man, I totally agree with you. And to be honest, that's not something I thought about. Like, yeah, it wasn't very clap worthy, that last scene.
Yeah, and people clapped when it was done, but it wasn't for that scene. It was for the film as a whole. But that last scene, especially the first Star Wars movie in, well, I guess at this point, 10 years or so, but the first good Star Wars movie in 30 years. Can you know, a little bit more of like a triumphant return kind of, because that would have been like, that would have been a personification of the film itself. Like with Luke saying like, oh yeah, I'm back. The movie and Lucasfilm and Disney and everyone is saying, that's the filmmakers saying, oh yeah, Star Wars is back and it's awesome. And you know, that would have been, I just feel like that would have been a much better way to end the film. But to answer your question, or your original question, no, I was fine that they reserved Luke. I'm not quite good with how they did it, but it's one of those things where, okay, well, if you put him in more, he gets in the way or he hogs the spotlight. And if you take him out completely, they obviously have no objective. So, you know, what can you do?
No. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm on two sides of the fence as well. You know, I just think that there's something about it that I felt was lacking, but there's also nothing that I would have preferred.
Yeah.
Other than maybe, like you said, that clap moment where it would just be, you know, like you know, I don't know. And true enough, you know, ending it on that helicopter shot, maybe they should have ended it on Luke's eyes.
Yeah, I would have preferred that.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree with you on all accounts.
Yeah, and I think we'll get more of these awesome. I guess the only thing that separates this from like maybe what I feel when I come out of like a Marvel movie is a Marvel movie's always got some cool action sequence that the heroes do.
Yeah.
And there wasn't something here in this movie to that level for me, but that's because these are new characters and as we've seen with the internet, you can't just have them have awesome abilities right off the bat. So that's going to be more for these next two films is going to be Rey being more of an awesome lady with the lightsaber, you know, or Finn being more of a badass, you know, I mean, because they're sort of, in my mind, they're kind of like, not to pigeonhole them, but if you were to compare them to earlier characters, he's the Han Solo of the movies and she's the Luke. At the same time with them both being, but the opposite too, because she's the one flying the ship, and we'll see more of them growing into their own abilities, especially her. What was I talking about? I forgot.
You're talking about them being like analogs of older characters.
Yeah, and there will be wow moments to come, and which brings me to that fight with them and Kylo Ren. A lot of people had a problem with that. They're like, well, how's she gonna fight Kylo Ren, like the most dangerous like Sith whatever, and you know, with no training, virtually no training. And I'm like, okay, let's think about a couple things. So they've established that she is strong with the Force.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of not a great reason, but it is because of the nature of the Force. That really is. Right. I could just explain the entire thing with the Force. Just be like, hey, the Force is stronger with her, not with him. Now, let's take the training into consideration. I think everyone knows how to defend themselves with an edged weapon, basically. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, he's swinging at me. Okay, I will protect myself. Not rocket science. Especially, like, she's not facing Darth Maul. If she had been fighting Darth Maul, I would have been much more like, oh, no, that's impossible. She can't defend herself. Like, this guy has obvious training. Kylo, they had set up throughout the entire movie, and they're like, oh, with just one gunshot and he can't do anything. They spent the entire movie, literally the entire film, setting up how debilitating Chewie's crossbow is. Like how much damage it causes. So he gets shot with it, and he has to take a minute, like, oh fuck, ouch, shit, ow. And I think people online were talking about, like, I think if you looked closely, or maybe just the nature of the wound, I don't know what they were implying, but like, he's trying to keep his guts from spilling out. So, you know, he's fighting with a gut wound, basically. He's pissed off. He's emotionally unstable, which we know kind of affects your abilities if you are using the Force to fight. He's fighting two people, you know, at separate times, to be sure. And we also set up, they also sort of establish, like, Kylo Ren has the lightsaber and can use the Force. It can kill most people he encounters, but he's nowhere near, he's nowhere near Darth Vader. Like, he is still a pretty green, lightsaber, wielder, you know, in a way. Right. Like, yeah, he's better than everyone on the ship because he's the only one with a lightsaber and who can use the Force. But that's like, you know, to put it broadly, that's like being the only guy in the Special Olympics without a wheelchair. You're the only one with working legs. Like, well, yeah, you're gonna win the 100-yard dash. I mean, you know, you're way above everyone else in that way. That's Kylo Ren, like, you know.
My answer to that too is I mean, first of all, like you said, the Force. I mean, I think that's a good enough answer.
It really is.
But you know, on top of that too, think about in the Goblet of Fire. You know, here's Harry against Voldemort for the first time after Voldemort comes back, and he's holding his own against Voldemort in the graveyard there, and it's explained later, you know, that they're is it? I guess it's later. I don't know about the books. That the wands are linked, right? So for a while there, it's that same argument could have been used. Well, they can say anything they want in the next couple Star Wars movies to explain that whole situation. So that doesn't bother me at the moment. Does that make sense? I don't know.
No, and that's and honestly, it's less believable for me for them to fight again and her be trained. It's less believable in movies where they have zero ability. For some reason, the bad guy doesn't kill them, and then they meet again, and then the good guy is awesome now. Like, it's more believable that she held her own, but I mean, she would have eventually lost that fight to him. Like, under different circumstances, like whether, if he hadn't been shot, and if the Earth didn't split apart and a bunch of other stuff wasn't happening, he would have killed her. And I think it's very realistic to show that she could have at least kept herself from being killed under those circumstances, because there are no circumstances under which he wouldn't have killed her. I would have hated for him to go like, you don't even deserve to be killed by me, and just leave, because that would have made no sense. It would have made no sense.
Killed his dad. Yeah,
exactly. So
I'll kill my dad, but I won't kill you, perfect stranger.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that either. I think the internet likes to jump on like specific moments, and really this is probably a broader discussion, but the death of film criticism has really started with the nitpicking of single scenes that will ruin an entire film. So a good example of this is like Jurassic World, right? Which may not be the strongest film ever made. I'll give you that. But what I'm going to say is I think the point stands because when the internet jumps on Bryce Dallas Howard in the heels, you can't run in heels against a T-Rex. This is running in heels anyway, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then you nitpick that and blow that out of proportion as if that's a film criticism.
Yeah.
That's the death of film criticism.
Yeah.
That's the birth of like superficial nitpicking. And Star Wars didn't escape that either. It's got its fair share of people who nitpick little scenes or little things like, oh, well, what are these random little characters, that are in Maz Kanata's like bar or whatever. And it's like, well, what were the random characters in like Greedo? It's the same thing. You can't just pick on a thing and say that is a stupid thing, I don't know. To me, it's just stupid that that's sort of what film criticism has become, or really the consensus of it is. Like, if I can pick a hole in one scene, that invalidates the entire film. And one scene out of context, mind you. And Star Wars did not escape that, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, So overall, Hooper, would you say, that you recommend the film, like on a scale of 1 to 10, or if you gave it a letterboxd score, what would you throw it down there as?
I'll speak in non-spoiler terms now, because I'm just going to mark on the time code that we're done with spoilers, because obviously I will not recommend it to people who know those plot details.
Right.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's very for lack of a better word, it's very competently presented. I mean, it's well done. It does feel like a Star Wars film, and while they do lean on a lot of the structure and parallel character roles as maybe A New Hope, I've found that refreshing, and quite applicable to the story they were trying to tell and the reasons they were trying to tell it. I thought it was very entertaining. I really liked our new characters, which I had some hesitation. I was just like, why they're going to really have to work hard to make me. It's just like any kind of show. Like, you really have to sell me on your protagonists quickly, because I'm going to lose interest if I don't know why I like them. And they did a good job in really in each of their first scenes, to show me like why I should care about them. And throughout the movie, and especially as they grew closer to each other, like as allies, I just thought it was handled really well. I thought I thought Rey was handled really well in particular. Well, Rey and Finn both. I mean, first of all, I really liked seeing a character who used to be a stormtrooper. That's an interesting dynamic that we haven't seen in this franchise before. And nor really the active female. I mean, we saw a little bit of that with Leia, but really not to the degree of Rey, obviously. I mean, Leia was spunky, but she was still kind of a damsel in distress. But and I liked. They did a good job with Rey because I didn't feel like they were overcompensating. Like, we must make the female character, like, you know, the only like sort of like I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar thing she did was that she got on to Finn about running and holding her hand, you know. But everything else she did, it was just like this is how you write a female character. You write a character that doesn't have to be a female, but she is.
Yeah.
You know, but there's nothing about it that like makes you think like my only hang up with the gender of characters is I don't want to be constantly thinking about the fact that they're of a male or female, especially if it's a female and it's talked about a lot that it's a female. Like, oh, it's so important they did a female character. No, it's not important. It's not important at all. It really isn't. But if they can do it and it's done well, I don't care. I could care less about if it's a male or female. So, you wrote a good female character? I can vouch for the writing of this female character. I thought it was done well without being too preachy or obvious what they were doing, you know?
Yeah.
Which ultimately turns me off of the whole thing in general, if it is that. So,
yeah.
No, I thought it was fine.
Good deal. Yeah, I still recommend it as well. I would like to get around to seeing it again. I don't know that I will in theaters, but maybe I'll make a purchase when it comes out on Blu-ray, because you know I had a good time with it, and I have a few problems with it, but you know what? It's like I said in that original review, the problems don't matter because the movie's fun.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's in theaters now, Dustin.
Let's do it. Let me pull up the list here.
I got some on my phone. So we've got 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi that we spoke about before. I didn't realize this movie is 2 hours and 24 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, long Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. Dustin, we should go see Norm of the North, starring Rob Schneider's voice.
That sounds like the best thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
I saw the previews for this film, like on TV or something, and I thought it was related to Madagascar, but it's not. Like, it looks like Madagascar, but it is not. It's that unoriginal and unappealing. That it's not even Madagascar.
Also, Ride Along 2, but doing some aggressive press lately, I've noticed.
They are.
Those people are everywhere. They're on the lip sync battle, and they're, doing all kind of Conan. Yeah, I saw the Conan bit. So yeah, if you want to do that, I don't really see anything else.
Yeah,
you know,
those are the only things opening wide. So.
Yeah, we haven't done this in a couple of weeks, so obviously what's playing right now, obviously Star Wars, also The Revenant, which I watched. Well, I'll mention this in a minute. But anyway, The Revenant is playing, and I've heard good things about it, about the performances, about the cinematography, the direction. So, as much as I hated his speech for Birdman and a couple of aspects of Birdman, like the anger at the tentpole movie and stuff, I really respect Alejandro Iñárritu as a director. I mean, he puts out beautiful movies, so I can't be mad at him just because he has opinions.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think it looks brilliant. Like it's a beautiful movie, and I've heard a couple of good things about it, and I intend on checking it out very soon.
Yeah, I do want to see it. I just I don't think I'll be able to see it in theaters. If anything, if I see anything in theaters, it'll probably be The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino's 8th movie, 9th technically, but Kill Bill's technically one movie, I guess. Yeah, and I've heard good things about The Hateful Eight as well.
Yeah.
So we'll maybe check that out. There's also
I've heard good things about it.
there's also Joy, with Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro, David O. Russell's latest collaboration with all those same actors. All again, I've heard good things. Concussion, Will Smith, Carol is getting a lot of attention right now for its performances.
Yep.
Hunger Games is out, Good Dinosaur is out, Point Break is out. So yeah, I've realized sort of halfway through that I remember I have read out all these all these movies. Couple of
Can I just throw this in here really quick? I don't know if I mentioned this during our look ahead to 2016. But, the 13 Hours film.
Yeah.
The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Do you know that both Jim Halpert and Roy from The Office are in that film?
Oh, Roy's in it too?
Yeah, Roy's in the movie too, so it's going to be really weird if they ever have scenes together. Because I'm going to be like, nah, don't you come around here, Roy.
No.
Pam's with Jim now. They're married, they have kids. Don't you come around, you homewrecker.
You stop it.
Stop
Stay
it, Roy.
In the warehouse.
Yeah.
At least
you got fired from the warehouse.
At least Daryl's not in it, because then it's like, what are you doing here, Craig?
Right.
What I was going to say about when we were talking about The Revenant was I recently watched a I forgot who it was. Anyway, somebody was doing a director's roundtable, and I watched the whole thing on YouTube, and it really, how I've been trying to recapture my human emotions, and I've been trying to sort of rediscover what I like about movies. And it was one of those roundtables where it really made me feel that. Like,
really?
Who was it? It was David, the host, and then David O. Russell, Alejandro Iñárritu, Danny Boyle. Who was next to him? Crap. There's another Brit. Oh, Tom Hooper, Quentin Tarantino, and Ridley Scott.
Wow.
And they were all being asked about their movies, and they were all being asked in general and about their careers, and it was a really good roundtable, and you got all these insights from everybody about all kinds of different things. Danny Boyle, Danny Boyle and Ridley Scott talked about having made a space movie, and which, by the way, if you haven't seen Sunshine by Danny Boyle, that's a great movie. That's a fantastic
it's really, really
movie.
Good.
That was a gem.
It's awesome.
Quentin Tarantino talked a lot about how he makes his movies and the fact that he only wants to do 10. I mean, Quentin Tarantino has said he only wants to do 10 films and he wants to stop.
Yeah.
He's only got 2 more. And Ridley was like, why? And he's just like, because I'll be done, after that. And, Ridley Scott's made like hundreds of movies. So he's like, you want to stop? Why?
Yeah.
But it's a really, just to hear their stories. I wish I could, let me, if I go into where my saved links are, it might still be on my Facebook page, but, I think I posted it. I mean, it didn't come out of nowhere, but, man, it was a really, really cool, roundtable. And it just sort of got me thinking, like, these are the kind of filmmakers I want to see movies from.
Yeah.
And it got me kind of thinking, like, I want to sort of go back through the careers of these directors and check out their films. You can Google it, find the roundtable with all those people. It's probably about an hour long, but it's really interesting to watch. And it got me thinking, like, I want to go watch all David O. Russell's movies. And I just realized, like, these are the directors who I will at least consider their next project without even knowing anything about it. With probably the only people who are missing from that discussion were, like, the Coen brothers and, well, of course I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but, like, those are the people who make the movies that Martin Scorsese. Those are the kind of people whose movies I want to see all the time and who do them well and usually without any air of pretension or bad storytelling. They don't make rookie mistakes. They don't get on a soapbox with their movies. They just make movies that I want to watch.
Right.
And especially I'm really growing. Quentin Tarantino is really growing on me as a filmmaker. And I'm kind of glad that I have a latent interest in him and not like back in the early 2000s when everyone was just like, jumping all over him about how great he was and how revolutionary he was. I was just like, everyone's trying to, remember in college, everyone was trying to be him. Every script was like a carbon, him and Kevin Smith. Every script was just this filled with these scenes, this dialogue that had nothing to do with the story. And everyone thought they were being him because they were having characters having funny conversations. And I was like, yeah, but it ties into the story. The difference is,
right. And also the difference is that when Quentin Tarantino does it, it's interesting to listen to.
Yeah, exactly.
It can't just be, ridiculous conversation just because I wanted to write something.
Not like that racist diatribe I had to read. God.
I know, right?
I enjoyed it. I loved it.
Yeah. I loved every bit of it. I got to say a lot of things that I would never say.
Yeah, I had to say the N-word a lot.
You did. But that's case in point of people trying to be Quentin. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I came into SCAD that first year, I hadn't seen a single Quentin Tarantino movie.
I don't think I had either.
To this day, the only one I've seen is Pulp Fiction, and that's because John got me to watch that. But literally reading everybody and watching everybody's like screenplays and films like turned me off of it so much that I just haven't gone back to see anything he's done. So everything that people talk about, like Django and all that stuff and Hateful Eight, I have not seen, and I don't have much of an interest in. Although I will admit I do have an interest in Hateful Eight for some reason.
It's probably all the good actors.
Yeah, I think that's probably it.
And that's something his movies all have too. Is all that list of good actors. Of course, that's obviously a very large ensemble, but I don't know if I'll go. I'm not going to go back and watch all of Ridley Scott's movies. I'm just going to watch the ones that jump out at me, and same with a lot of these people. But I could probably go back and watch every single because he's had so few. And that's the thing about Quentin Tarantino is like he doesn't just take on a ton of projects. He writes and directs all of his movies, and and so he's had few projects, but all those projects are hits to me artistically. Right. So I think that his films are worth going back and looking at, as like a, and again, like if I didn't already own a number of them, I'm sure in 5 or however years when they release like the Quentin Tarantino box set, I would buy all of them because I think they're all worth owning, really. I mean, except for a couple that I'm, kind of like meh about, I don't know. Some people really love Kill Bill. I didn't really care for it.
Yeah.
Or Death Proof, really. Although I need to give that one a second look because the more John talks about it, the more I'm like, did I misjudge that one? And I've only seen it once. So,
yeah.
But yeah, those directors are the ones that make me like want to keep going to the movies.
Yeah.
And the way they talk about film and the reverence they have for film makes me think like this is a unique and great art form. And especially when they start talking about the theater, like people going to the theaters, and Quentin is saying like, I don't think we're doing enough to get them to come out to the theater. And I just thought that's interesting, the humility that comes from someone like that, it's not their fault. Like we're not giving them enough reason to leave their homes to come see our films. Right. I just thought like, how interesting, like to take to take that burden on your own shoulders instead of saying like, I don't know people's problems, and our movies are awesome, you know?
Right, exactly.
So, for them to acknowledge like the future of the industry and also the purity of the movie going experience and whether or not you can still preserve that, like, it's real interesting.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend anyone watch that RoundTable. It really is great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, that's probably ought to do it. Wow, we've been going for a while. Woo. I gotta get out of this booth, Dustin.
minutes.
There is no air in here, and I'm sweating. I'm so hot. Woo, man, that is definitely a downside of being in this booth. My God,
Fogging up the windows in there.
fogging it up. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the HooperCast. So stay tuned next week. Dustin and I will talk about other stuff. I'm still, I'm officially, I've got one more episode to watch, but I'm, through certain means, I'm able to use the FX Now app. So
Yes.
I'm actually caught up on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like, I'm now watching it currently
Live.
for the first
Awesome.
time in the history of its show, me watching it.
Awesome.
I also intend, I'm on a waiting list at the library to start watching Fargo.
Okay.
There are 13 people in front of me who want the first season.
Oh.
I was like, yo. Then there's 5 copies in 1 week and stuff. So in the meantime, I've started watching The Americans, that FX show. So and it was a smooth transition from High Castle to that because it's speculative wartime, period drama.
Sure.
So that's my current Amazon Prime show right now. The first 2 seasons are on Amazon Prime.
Awesome.
So there's that. I'm still watching Archer. And yes, but as soon as Fargo becomes available, I'm dropping everything and I'm watching because the first season's on DVD at the library and the whole second season is still in the FX Now app. But I don't want to watch it because I can't see the first season, but I don't want to finish the first season and then the episodes expire off the app. So, but I'm trying to take my time with it. But I've heard Fargo's really good from a lot of people. And so I've gotten enough recommendations to think, okay, this is 2 seasons of really good, storytelling and filmmaking, so I want to jump on it. Mm-hmm. So, especially because I think it just got at least nominated for some awards, and everyone's talking about how good Kirsten Dunst was, and I like her.
Yeah, I do too.
And I hear and Fat Jesse Plemons too is in the second season.
Fat Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, he's like her husband, I think. Yeah,
The dude's creepy. He's got creepy eyes.
he does. Imagine him just fatter. Imagine how much bigger creepier his eyes get. They're buggier.
Oh no. Yeah. I'm no,
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Anyway, those are the shows I'm watching right now. So probably have a movie next week or something because I'm not going to finish anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Woo. All right, Dustin. Well,
All right,
we'll put this
Hooper.
one to bed. Oh, sorry. I forgot something. Little piece of business
did.
here. A little piece of that business.
I was just about to remind you.
Yes, indeed. By the way, everybody, this episode is brought to you by Letterboxd. Right now, the listeners of our show have the chance to win a free 1-year pro account upgrade or extension on Letterboxd. Now, Dustin, what is Letterboxd? Do you know? Should I tell them?
You should go ahead and tell him, Hooper.
I shall tell them. Letterboxd is a social network for film lovers that lets you track, rate, and review the films you watch, follow other members to get recommendations, publish lists of films, and plenty more.
That's a lot of stuff.
It is a lot of stuff, and it is free of charge to use. But if you get that pro account, you got additional features such as a customized summary of your past year's viewing. If you want to enter to win a free pro account upgrade or extension, if you've already got it and you just want to get through another year without paying the premium for it, you can email us at hoopercast@gmail.com for your chance to win. The code word this month, we're going to have code words every month. The code word this month is Hooper. We've already gotten a lot of entries on this, but if you want to get in, throw your hat in the ring, there's still time this month. I think this one, there will be see, the 15th is Saturday, and so 7 days later, probably 2 more of these episodes with this code word in it, and then we'll read so that'll be episode 114, I think, that we'll read the winner for January.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
But the code word for January is still Hooper. So type Hooper in the subject line. And please, I can't stress this enough. I've put out correction after correction after correction. Please include your Letterboxd username in the email. If you don't, I don't know who to give the promotion to. Please include your Letterboxd username in there. The winner will be selected at the end of every single month. And you can also follow our show on Letterboxd. Just search HooperCast. That's letterboxd.com, letterboxd.com. Look for HooperCast. Send us the email, get the promotion, listen to the show, tell your friends, and we're going to change the code word next month. You've got to listen to figure out what it is. You get in on that promotion, get yourself a free pro account. Letterboxd is a great tool. It's really cool. I especially like it because I don't feel pressured to write a long review of a movie.
Right.
Our account essentially just has the movies we talk about on the show in a shorter written form, kind of a summation of our thoughts more than anything else. But we also want to entice people to come listen to the long form reviews in our podcast itself. But if you just want a summary, or you can't pop in your headphones at work, you can go to our Letterboxd page and see what we thought. See our rough summary of what we thought of a movie.
But you won't get the full experience.
Yeah, but you want the full experience. You want the full Hoopy, the full Monty,
the full Hoopy.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.